Get out of the car, you stupid idiot. When I regained my memory, I vowed to leave my husband and in-laws who had put me through this. Where am I? I'm Emma, 28. I woke up in a hospital bed. Confused about why I was in such a place, a man rushed into the hospital room with hurried footsteps. He approached, his shoulders tense, but I didn't recognize his face at all. I don't know this person. Excuse me, who are you? Emma, are you kidding me? If you're awake, you're fine. Hospitalization is an exaggeration, you know. You're getting me into trouble. He shouted angrily. Quite rude for a first meeting. As the shouting was heard, nurses and security guards rushed in and took the man away. In that brief moment, frozen in shock, Emma, you're awake. I'm so glad you woke up. I was really worried. As my mother Kaylee entered the room, tears streaming down her face, she spoke to me. But I'm feeling like, what's going on? Usually expressionless Kevin is unexpectedly crying. Even our father, Ken, was in tears behind him. I was told that I collapsed on the road in front of our house. Due to the impact of the fall, I had a concussion, and I also had a fairly large cut on my head that required several stitches, but I don't remember. Since there was a lot of bleeding from my head, it seems that a neighbor called an ambulance. That's what Mom told me. Mom, by the way, who was that violent man who came suddenly earlier? A violent man. Now it was the family's turn to be puzzled. When they asked the nurse and security guard who took the man away, it turned out that the rough man was my husband. Wait. Am I married? I have absolutely no memory of that. Emma, are you serious? Kevin is also looking worriedly at me. First of all, while I was lying on the floor in front of our house, the guy just now was yelling at me to get out of the hospital right away. Maybe amnesia, Mom muttered and hastily pressed the nurse call button. When Mom explained the situation to the nurse, I ended up undergoing various tests one after another. Of course, it could not be done in one day because there were many examination items. Since the test results wouldn't come out immediately, many people came to visit until the results were available for several days. From colleagues, I received lots of get-well gifts like my favorite sweets, flowers, fruits, and some even brought personal treats. Friends showed up one after another, worried. In the midst of all this, I was asked, how long are you going to stay in the hospital? How much money do you think it will cost? Who is going to pay for it? Get discharged already. You're such a lazy wife. Get out and work soon. We're short-staffed because of you. Among the many visitors, it was my husband, John, and his parents who uttered such unbelievable words. Catching sight of this, my father, taken aback at first, soon retaliated in a voice unlike his usual quiet demeanor. My daughter's seriously injured and hospitalized. It's outrageous to speak such words to her. Get out of here quickly. My brother and mother also supported my father. Don't come here anymore, please. That day, despite the heated argument with my family, my husband and in-laws still persistently came over. They kept complaining and shouting, pestering me about when I would be discharged and how much trouble I was causing. Eventually, I moved to a private room, and they were barred from visiting. The hospital couldn't afford any trouble, so they allowed me to move to a private room without additional charges, which was lucky. After reviewing the test results, it turns out that a part of my memory is completely missing. It felt strange to realize that such a thing could happen in reality. The doctor initially suspected it might be a traumatic injury, but since there was no intracranial bleeding despite hitting my head on the concrete road, it seems it wasn't traumatic after all. The impact to the head seemed to trigger a psychogenic condition, according to the diagnosis. I really don't understand anything. I don't even recognize my husband's face, and I can't believe I was married. It seems I was married and living with Phil and Mill. My husband, John, is 35 years old. He was working at his parents' store. I was also working as an office worker in another company, so we were both working. However, John and his parents monitored my actions, took my earnings, and it wasn't a happy marriage. They even checked the work schedule, and on my days off, I had to help at their store for no pay. Almost all my salary was withdrawn once deposited, leaving me with no money, and all the household chores fell on me, despite us both working. Even though we both worked, he would say, "Why should I have to do housework? That's women's work, isn't it? Don't push your chores onto me." Saying that, John didn't do anything around the house at all. Not only that, but he constantly blamed me for mistakes and hurled insults like useless and clumsy at me. My in-laws also complained to me about my housework, my job, and our difficulties having a child. I couldn't even get time to eat my own meals in this house. Of course, living like this, I was getting more and more exhausted from overwork. John was driving me to and from work, but that was not out of affection, but rather to monitor me to make sure I didn't waste money or make any detours. It was my colleague and friend Max who enlightened me about my marital and living situation with John and Mill and Phil. I confided in Max about my struggles with John and my in-laws. Listening to Max's account, memories of the day of the accident slowly resurfaced. On that day, as usual, I was berated by John over a trivial matter while driving back home. "Your shopping took too long, making us late for errands. What if we're delayed because of you, you incompetent?" That wasn't my shopping. I was looking for something Mill asked for. "If you helped, we'd finish sooner. Don't make excuses. It's your errand. Whenever we're out together, it ends up making me feel sick. I shouldn't have come." After nearly an hour of yelling at my husband until he came to his senses, we pulled up to the house and I was getting out of the car when my still irritated husband said, "Get out of the car, you stupid idiot." He then shoved me out of the driver's seat, and as a result, I fell out of the car and hit my head on the concrete ground. Despite my condition, John callously drove off, leaving me lying there. I was lying there, bleeding from my head without moving, so the neighbor hurriedly called an ambulance for me. Recalling that memory, I called the police and told them what happened at the time, and the police investigation progressed. By chance, it was confirmed through footage from a nearby security camera that my memory was indeed true. Upon hearing that, anger shook through my body. Why did I have to endure such treatment? I'll make sure they pay for it properly. I vowed to do so in my heart. As always, the fact that I was married to John felt distant and surreal, but the strong fatigue lingering in my body, the emaciated form, and the results of the blood tests all indicated a terrible state, confirming that my marriage life was indeed as Max had described. Of course, after being discharged from the hospital, I returned to my parents' house, not the house where John and his parents lived. At my parents' house, everything was taken care of. "Emma, today we have your favorite fried chicken. Eat plenty. Today, Dad bought a cake. Let's all have it later." Every day, my mother prepared delicious meals, and my father and brother took care of everything else. Thanks to being able to eat my mother's delicious meals 3 times a day, my body gradually recovered day by day. My workplace understood, and they said they wanted me to return to work after taking a proper rest. Thanks to living at my parents' house, not only did the wounds from the accident heal, but the general feeling of fatigue in my body also disappeared, and my once neglected hair and skin started to look beautiful again. It was clear how much stress I had been under in my married life. Suddenly, I felt anxious. Does being married mean I have to go back to that house again? Such anxiety unconsciously slipped out of my mouth. That's not true at all. Who would send their precious daughter back to such a place? You should divorce that person immediately. My mother told me so, and as a result of family discussions, we decided to hire a lawyer who was a friend of my father's. This lawyer has known me since I was a child, having a long-standing relationship with my father. After hearing the situation and sharing our anger, he graciously agreed to take the case. Thanks to this lawyer, who was also a terrific lawyer, the divorce began to move smoothly. Meanwhile, at the house where John's family lived, John and his parents were in an uproar. When is she going to come back? Without her, neither the household chores nor the shop can function properly. She needs to come back as soon as possible. Mill also said, she's been discharged for a long time, hasn't she? Why hasn't she come back here? Instead of resting, why doesn't she give birth to an heir? His father also expressed indignation. She's really a spoiled wife. When she comes back, we'll have to straighten her out. In fact, we received calls almost every day at my parents' house. Emma, you're there, right? Why don't you come back here? You've already recovered, right? I have a life here, so please come back soon. My brother, who answered the phone, told me this. Although my family unanimously said there was no need to return, I wanted to go back to pick up my belongings left there. I consulted with a lawyer and decided to have Dad accompany me. And from that day on, John's family faced a difficult situation. As soon as I entered the house, John and in-laws said to me, "How long are you going to stay at your parents' house? What were you doing there, not even answering the phone? You're such an irresponsible wife. Hurry up and come home. There's a pile of chores and work waiting for you." When the lawyer and my father entered from behind, they were momentarily surprised and quieted down. Then they exclaimed, "Why isn't she alone when she's coming back? Why did you bring a lawyer? What's the lawyer here for?" they protested. "Just sit down for a moment and talk, okay?" That's what the lawyer said as he calmed down my husband and the others, leading them to the living room with my father. I went to my room on the second floor to pack the essentials. Why did I need to come back to this house? It was because I remembered leaving crucial evidence of domestic abuse here. I had been keeping a diary documenting John's and my in-laws' behavior, along with dates. The lawyer told me it was very important evidence. And I also had another piece of evidence I had hidden from my in-laws for a long time. As I packed my belongings, "What's that? Who agreed to a divorce? Don't make decisions on your own." With that, I heard the sound of the desk being banged. Reflexively, my body tensed up and I crouched down. It seems like the lawyer and my father talked about divorce. I quickly went downstairs with packed belongings. As I reached the door, John came out. "What's with the luggage? Weren't you supposed to be back? Are you talking about divorce? Explain it properly." He grabbed me. At the last moment, the lawyer intervened. "Violence is not acceptable. I'm not being violent. I just want to talk to her." "Hey, let's talk properly first." As he tried to approach me again, the doorbell rang. "Who is it?" Mel answered through the intercom. "It's the police. Is Mr. John Smith home?" Mr. John Smith is my husband's full name. "Why the police are here?" Mil's voice trembled. "If Mr. John Smith is here, please open the door," the police repeated. Mil's footsteps approached, and she opened the door. "Excuse me, is Mr. John Smith here?" "It's me." The husband replied, "So, Mr. John Smith, we'll arrest you on suspicion of assault. Please come with us to the station." Exclaimed my husband in disbelief. A faint gasp could be heard from the mill. My husband, visibly shaken, also asked, "Why me?" Well, it was because a formal complaint was filed with the police about the recent accident, turning it into an assault case. Luckily, there was surveillance footage, leaving no room for denial. At first, he seemed puzzled and compliant as he was taken away, but gradually, he began to shout, "I'm not at fault. It's her clumsiness. It's exaggerated to blame me for a little push. I'm not guilty. Emma, are you listening? Emma, hey, withdraw the complaint quickly." Neighbors gathered upon hearing the shouting. Mill cried out at the door, "John, why? Why you, John? Why?" Phil was visibly shaken. With my in-laws glancing sideways, my father and I and our lawyer left. From then on, citing the incident and ongoing emotional abuse, I sent a divorce demand letter to the in-laws and John. As for emotional abuse, it was meticulously recorded in the diary I collected from home. Then, on that day, John's aggressive voice and the sound of him banging on the desk brought back my memory completely. This situation of emotional abuse flashed back all at once. Even on the voice memos on my phone, there were meticulously recorded verbal abuses. And there were so many of them. There were nearly 100 records in about a year. Not only from my husband but also from my in-laws, there were verbal abuses. The triggers were really trivial things. There were recorded voices severely blaming me for minor delays in dinner timing or incomplete bath preparations. "Emma, it's already 7 p.m. and you haven't prepared dinner yet. Why can't you even do such a simple task properly? Stir fry again. You can't even care for our bodies properly. You're really a failure as a wife. What are you trying to do? You don't have time to sit down and eat with us. Days work to close the shop. You're really useless." Such remarks from my mill and, "You still haven't prepared the bath. I said I'd go in right after dinner. What are you doing? Your incompetence is messing up the schedule. You're really slow at everything. Can't do anything without being told, Many recordings of such remarks from my husband were left behind. Words like failure, useless, lazy, clumsy, and various other insults flew out, causing my body to shrink just from hearing them. My diary and voice recorder serve as solid evidence, leaving no room for denial. The divorce went smoothly since there was enough evidence. I also sent certain evidence along with a certified letter to my Phil and Mill. It was my husband John's test results. Despite being blamed by my in-laws for not having children, the cause was John's azoospermia. I kept silent to save John's face, but now that we're divorcing, it's irrelevant. They probably never imagined their son's infertility would lead to this. John was prosecuted but showed no remorse in court, yelling, "It's her fault. Bring her here. I've done nothing wrong." Such an appearance made a poor impression on the judge, and he was sentenced to imprisonment without probation. Not only that, I decided to sue my husband in civil court for emotional DV due to moral harassment. I made sure to get adequate compensation and completely cut ties with such a man. Now that my memory has returned, I feel relieved to be completely detached from my husband. While he's in prison, there's no chance of seeing him, which brings some peace of mind. With evidence of emotional abuse from my in-laws, we negotiated and received compensation. Initially, they resisted, saying, "Why us? We're not at fault. If anything, she should be grateful for the guidance we provided as in-laws." However, upon realizing the existence of evidence, they must have felt the impact on their business and decided to offer a more substantial settlement than the usual compensation. However, the concerns of my in-laws became a reality. It was only natural, given that their son, who worked with them, was arrested. I heard that the son of that store dropped his wife out of the car and hurt her badly. It seems like he was bullying his wife routinely. Even though his wife was working outside, it seems she was made to work for free at that shop. With such rumors spreading, the shop was in no condition to operate. Customers dwindled rapidly, and it seems the business closed down within half a year of John's arrest. They had taken out a loan using the land as collateral, so they lost both the land and their savings, leading to bankruptcy. Now, they're barely making ends meet, living as a couple in an old apartment while receiving welfare. Will the three of them live together when John is released from prison? It's no longer my concern. Emma, wanna grab dinner today? My boss and current boyfriend, Max, cheerfully asks after work. Stop it, there are still others around. You two are always lovey-dovey, who can't bear to watch. He doesn't care if his colleagues are scornful of him for this. I've made reservations, hurry up and let's go. He says without listening. It's been years since my ex-husband's arrest. Since my ex-husband was released from prison, he was the one who supported me and always listened to me when I was troubled by being followed around. Eventually, he started giving me rides to work out of concern. One day, my ex-husband said, "Emma, I need to talk to you. Let's live together again. I've changed, so I'm sure we'll get along." He said that and suddenly approached. At that moment, Max stepped in between my ex-husband and me, saying, "Stop bothering her. You have nothing to do with this. It's between me and Emma," my ex-husband retorted, pushing back against Max. However, Max threatened, "Emma is important to me. Give up on her already. I'll call the cops. If I see you again, you won't get off easy." Max, originally sporty with a solid build and rugged features, was quite intimidating to my relatively smaller ex-husband. Surprisingly, beneath his tough exterior, Max's love for sweets created an endearing contrast. He's a wonderful person who respects my opinions.